I heard crying in the garage, opened it, and found a horrifying truth. Even now those words echo in my chest like a wound that never fully healed. My name is Lorraine. I'm 38 years old, and for most of my life I thought I understood what family meant. I thought love was supposed to protect us, that bonds of blood and years of shared memories could shield us from cruelty. But I was wrong. What I found that night shattered everything I believed about the people I called my own. It was late autumn, the kind of night where the air is crisp enough to bite, and the world feels unusually still. I was alone in the house, or at least, I thought I was. My husband Daniel was away for work, and our son Mark had gone to stay with a friend. I'd been reading in bed, drifting in and out of sleep, when I heard something faint and unsettling. At first, I dismissed it as the wind creaking through the shutters, or maybe a raccoon nosing around the yard. But the sound persisted, a soft, trembling cry. It wasn't the cry of an animal. It wasn't the sound of the wind. It was human. My heart skipped. I remember sitting up, the book falling onto the quilt, my breath suddenly uneven. For a moment I froze, convincing myself I had imagined it. But then it came again, a low wail, muffled, as if trapped behind walls. I padded barefoot through the hallway, every shadow suddenly feeling alive, every silence heavier. The sound led me down the stairs, into the kitchen, and then toward the garage door. That was when the dread sank into my bones. The crying wasn't outside. It was coming from within my own house. I hesitated with my hand on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at me not to open it, that whatever I was about to see would unravel everything I thought I knew. But curiosity and a strange maternal pull pushed me forward. I opened the garage door slowly, and what I saw made my stomach twist. There, in the middle of the cold concrete floor, sat a girl. She couldn't have been more than 15. Her wrists were tied with rough rope, her face blotchy and streaked with tears. Her clothes were dirty, her hair tangled, and her eyes, God, her eyes, were wide with terror. She looked up at me as if I were both her salvation and her doom. For a second, the world stopped. I felt as if I'd been thrown into someone else's nightmare. I wanted to scream, to call the police, to untie her immediately, but I was paralyzed. And then, the questions crashed in all at once. Who was she? How did she get here? And most terrifying of all, who had put her here? The rope was knotted so tightly it bit into her skin. I rushed forward, fumbling with it, whispering, it's okay, I've got you." My hands shook as I worked at the knots, and the girl sobbed harder, trying to speak but choking on her fear. Finally, the rope loosened, and I pulled it free. She recoiled at first, as if unsure whether I was friend or foe. "My name's Lorraine," I said softly, kneeling down to her level. "You're safe now. I promise." She shook her head, tears dripping down her chin. "No," she whispered hoarsely. "Not safe." "He'll come back." Those words sliced through me. He. Who was she talking about? My mind reeled. Was there someone hiding in the house? Was she kidnapped? My stomach knotted as the realization hit me. Someone I knew must have put her there. I tried to ask her more, but she kept repeating the same thing. "He'll come back. He'll come back." Her whole body trembled, and I knew I couldn't press her. I wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and led her inside, every step heavy with fear. I wanted to call the police immediately, but something held me back. A voice in my head whispered that I needed to know the truth first, needed to understand what kind of horror had unfolded under my own roof. So I waited until she calmed down enough to drink some water, her hands shaking as she held the glass. Finally, she spoke, barely audible. "He said, if I told anyone, he'd hurt me. He said nobody would believe me." I leaned closer, heart pounding. "Who, sweetheart? Who did this to you?" Her lips trembled, and then she whispered a name that nearly made me drop the glass. "Daniel." My husband. The world tilted sideways. I felt heat rising to my face, my pulse roaring in my ears. Number. It couldn't be true. She must have been mistaken. Daniel was away for work. He'd left 2 days ago. He couldn't have done this. And yet, how else would she have ended up in our garage? I wanted to deny it, to scream at her that she was wrong, but the look in her eyes stopped me. It was a look no child should ever wear, a look born of betrayal and terror. My chest constricted. I felt as though my life had split into 2 parts, the before, where I believed my family was ordinary and safe, and the after, where a dark truth clawed its way into the light. I tucked her onto the couch, keeping the lights low, and sat nearby, shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I should have dialed 911 then, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to see Daniel's face, to hear his voice, to know if the man I had married was truly capable of such evil. The girl eventually fell asleep, exhausted, her breathing shallow. I sat awake all night, my thoughts looping in a haze of disbelief and rage. When dawn broke, the house was bathed in pale light, and I felt hollow. Daniel came home that afternoon. He was supposed to be gone until Friday, but he walked in early, smiling like nothing was amiss, kissing me on the cheek as if he hadn't just left a child tied in our garage. My stomach churned. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to stay calm, to act normal, but my eyes betrayed me. He must have noticed the stiffness in my posture, the way I avoided his gaze. "Lorraine?" he asked, his voice carrying a strange edge. "What's wrong?" I wanted to scream, to throw the truth in his face, but I swallowed it down. Instead, I asked a question that trembled with hidden accusation. "Did you forget something in the garage?" For the briefest second, his expression faltered, a flicker of something, fear, maybe anger, crossed his face before he smoothed it into a smile. "Garage? No, why?" That was all the confirmation I needed. He knew. The girl stirred upstairs then, and Daniel's eyes darted toward the sound. He masked it quickly, but not before I caught the flash of recognition. My stomach dropped. It was true. All of it. I excused myself, rushing upstairs before he could follow. The girl was awake, clutching the blanket, panic flooding her eyes. "He's here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't let him take me again." I looked into her frightened eyes and made a silent vow. Whatever Daniel had done, whatever secrets he had buried, I would not let him destroy her, or me. That night, I didn't sleep. I pretended everything was fine, serving dinner, nodding along to his stories, but my mind was burning with rage and terror. I knew I had to act carefully. If Daniel realized I knew the truth, if he suspected I would expose him, I didn't know what he might do. Every word he spoke sounded different now, dripping with menace. Every smile was a mask hiding rot. I thought about the years we had spent together, the son we had raised, the trust I had given him without hesitation. All of it felt poisoned. And yet, for the sake of survival, I had to pretend. The girl stayed hidden in the guest room, too afraid to move, and I lied to Daniel, telling him she was a distant cousin's child who needed a place to stay. He pretended to believe me, but I could feel the tension crackling under his skin. I began searching the house when he wasn't around, desperate for answers. And then I found them. A hidden box tucked in the corner of the attic, filled with photographs, letters, and small trinkets. The pictures were of girls, different girls, some looking just as terrified as the one now in my house. My stomach churned as I flipped through them, bile rising in my throat. He had been doing this for years, and no one knew. That was when something inside me hardened. Betrayal that deep doesn't just break you. It forges something new, something sharper, colder. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I wasn't just a mother. I was a woman standing on the edge of a truth so monstrous it demanded justice. But how do you fight a man who knows every corner of your life? How do you protect a child when the danger is sleeping beside you, sharing your bed, smiling in your kitchen? I didn't have the answers yet. All I had was a burning resolve, and a girl whose haunted eyes would never let me forget what was at stake. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen staring at Daniel as he sipped his coffee, his face calm, unreadable. The same face I had once traced with my fingers on warm nights, the same lips that had whispered promises of forever. Now all I could see was the mask of a monster. My hands trembled as I gripped the counter, my mind spinning with the box I had found in the attic. The photographs, the letters, the undeniable proof that he had been doing this for years. I kept glancing toward the hallway, where upstairs the girl was still hiding. Every sound made me twitch. The clink of Daniel's spoon against the mug was too loud, too deliberate, as though mocking me. He must have known I was different, that the blindfold he had wrapped around me for years had finally slipped. And yet, he didn't speak of it. He let me stew in silence, as if daring me to confront him. By the time he left for work, I was shaking so badly I had to sit down. The girl, her name was Emily, I had learned, peeked her head from the guest room, her eyes red and swollen. She didn't ask me if she was safe anymore. She just sat beside me on the couch, silent, as if waiting for me to prove I was strong enough to protect her. I dialed 911 3 times that day, my thumb hovering over the call button. Each time I stopped myself. What if they didn't believe me? What if Daniel had spun webs so wide his power stretched beyond our walls? And worse, what if he found out before they could act? The thought of his wrath was unbearable. Instead, I called my sister, Margaret. She had always been my anchor, though we hadn't spoken much since our father's funeral. Family fractures had kept us apart, but desperation makes you swallow pride. When she answered, her voice soft and cautious, I nearly broke. "Margaret," I whispered, trying to steady myself. "I need you to come. Don't ask questions. Just come. Please." She hesitated. "Lorraine, what's going on?" "You sound—" "Please," I begged, tears rushing to my eyes. "Just trust me." "It's about Daniel." There was a long pause. Then, "I'll be there tonight." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Hours dragged by in suffocating silence. Emily refused to eat. She sat curled up, flinching at every creak of the house. I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. But even I wasn't sure of that anymore. That evening, Daniel came home earlier than usual. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He watched me too closely as he loosened his tie, his movements deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. My heart slammed in my chest. "Where's our guest?" he asked casually, pouring himself a drink. The words froze my blood. He knew. I forced a smile, my throat dry. "She's resting." "Rough night." He tilted his head, studying me. The way he hummed made my skin crawl. Then, without another word, he went upstairs. I nearly bolted after him, but fear rooted me. I couldn't make it too obvious. I heard his footsteps stop outside the guest room door. Silence stretched like a noose. Then, his steps moved on, into our bedroom. I exhaled, shakily, knees threatening to buckle. Later, after Daniel fell asleep, I crept into the guest room. Emily was awake, her eyes wide with terror. "He was here," she whispered. "He looked in." I hugged her tightly, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "I won't let him touch you again. I swear." But even as I said it, a cold truth settled over me. The police weren't just an option anymore. They were the only way out. I had been afraid of tearing my family apart, of the humiliation, the scandal, the destruction of everything we had built. But now I knew. That life was already over. Daniel had destroyed it the moment he dragged Emily into our garage. The next day, Margaret arrived. She took one look at Emily, then at me, and her face went pale. "Lorraine, what the hell is going on?" I broke down. Everything spilled out in heaving sobs. The crying in the garage, the ropes, the box in the attic, the truth Emily whispered to me. Margaret's face hardened with each word, her jaw clenching, her eyes narrowing. "You can't stay here," she said firmly. "Neither of you. We go to the police. Tonight. I shook my head wildly. If he finds out, if he suspects, we won't make it out of this house alive. Margaret grabbed my shoulders. Do you hear yourself? He's a predator, Lorraine. You've been living with a monster. And if you don't stop him, how many more Emilys will there be? Her words were a slap to my face. I hated them because they were true. My fear was killing me, but my silence would kill someone else. That night, after Daniel left for a supposed meeting, Margaret and I packed quickly. Emily clung to me like a shadow. My hands shook as I gathered a few essentials: birth certificates, money, photographs of Mark. The whole time my heart pounded with the fear that Daniel might walk back through the door at any second. We slipped out into the night, Margaret driving us away. Emily sobbed quietly in the back seat, and I held her hand tightly, whispering soothing words even as my own terror consumed me. We went straight to the police station. I'll never forget the moment I sat across from the detective, my voice shaking as I recounted everything. His expression shifted from doubt to horror to grim determination as I laid the photographs from the attic onto the table. Proof. Unshakable, damning proof. Emily's testimony sealed it. They promised protection, assured us that Daniel would be arrested, that justice would come. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope, but hope is fragile. And monsters don't go down without a fight. Daniel was arrested 2 days later, but not before he left me a note. It was waiting on the kitchen counter when I returned with officers to collect more belongings. My hand shook as I unfolded it. Lorraine, you think you've won, but you've only begun to see how deep this goes. You don't know me, not really, and you don't know what you've unleashed. My blood ran cold because hidden in those words was a threat, a promise, a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to face. Daniel's betrayal wasn't just about Emily. It was bigger, darker, rooted in a past I had never uncovered. I stared at the note. My reflection in the kitchen window blurred with tears, and I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The days after Daniel's arrest felt like stepping into another universe, one where nothing I had once trusted could be trusted anymore. On the surface, it seemed like justice had been served. He was taken away in handcuffs. The photographs and Emily's testimony were enough to hold him without bail. Yet even in those moments, I couldn't shake his words from my mind. You don't know me. Not really. And you don't know what you've unleashed. At night, I lay awake in Margaret's guest room, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I thought I knew about my husband. Every family dinner, every whispered goodnight, every father-son moment he shared with Mark, all of it now tainted with suspicion. My chest tightened when I thought of our son. He was away at college, safe for now. But how would he ever reconcile the truth about his father? Emily slept in the next room. Sometimes I'd hear her whimper in her dreams, calling out for her mother, for someone to save her. When I asked about her family, she shut down. She didn't want to talk about them. The only thing she said, in a whisper so soft I almost missed it, was, "He promised me they'd never see me again." I didn't push her. Trauma had its own clock, and I couldn't rush hers. Instead, I sat with her when she cried, made sure she ate, and told her over and over, "You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore." But deep down, I wasn't sure. Daniel's reach felt endless, as though even behind bars, he still had power. The police called me in for questioning several times, pressing for details. Each time they seemed more uneasy. One detective, a tall man with weary eyes, finally leveled with me. "Mrs. Keller, we believe your husband may be connected to other cases. Missing girls, unsolved disappearances. We think he's been doing this for a very long time." I swallowed hard, bile rising in my throat. I had lived beside him for 15 years, shared a bed with him, and yet I hadn't known. Or maybe I had chosen not to see. One afternoon, while Margaret was out and Emily napped, I returned to the house with 2 officers to collect more personal belongings. Walking into that home felt like walking into a mausoleum, silent, cold, every shadow whispering with betrayal. I hit it straight for the attic. I had only skimmed through the box before, too shaken to take in every detail, but now I needed to see, to understand the man I had married. The box was still there, untouched. I pulled it down, my hands trembling as I lifted the lid. Photographs, dozens of them, girls of varying ages, some smiling, some looking terrified, letters written in shaky handwriting, trinkets, bracelets, hair ribbons, scraps of clothing. My stomach churned. These were trophies, evidence of lives destroyed. At the very bottom, beneath a false layer, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. My breath hitched. With shaking fingers, I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in Daniel's neat script. Lorraine, you were never supposed to find this, but if you have, it means the mask has slipped. I chose you because you were blind enough to make me invisible. Don't fool yourself. You knew something was wrong all along. You just didn't want to see it. And for that, you are as guilty as I am. I dropped the paper as if it had burned me. His words clawed at my chest, feeding the doubt already gnawing at me. Had I ignored signs? Had I let love blind me to the monster in my bed? The officers bagged the evidence, their expressions grim. One of them muttered, "This man's going away for life." But still, Daniel's note haunted me. His manipulation didn't stop when the handcuffs clicked shut. It was still working its way into my bones, making me question my own judgment, my own worth as a mother, a wife, a human being. When I got back to Margaret's, Emily was awake, sitting cross-legged on the bed, staring at the wall. "He used to say the same things to me," she whispered suddenly, "that no one would believe me, that if I told, it would be my fault." Her words broke something inside me. Daniel's cruelty wasn't just physical. It was psychological, a poison meant to seep deep and make us doubt ourselves. But for the first time, I saw it clearly. And I knew I couldn't let him win. Weeks passed and the trial date was set. Daniel pleaded not guilty, of course. His lawyer painted him as a family man, a respected businessman, someone incapable of such horrors. And the worst part? Some people believed it. Neighbors, colleagues, even distant relatives reached out to me, questioning if Emily was making it up, if maybe I had been manipulated. The betrayal cut deep. It was as though Daniel's shadow had stretched over everyone, twisting their perception, making them doubt what was real. The night before I was set to testify, Mark came home. My son, my beautiful boy, now 19 and taller than his father. He hugged me hard, his voice breaking. "Mom, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know who Dad is anymore." I held him close, tears spilling down my face. "Neither do I, sweetheart. Neither do I. But we know who he isn't. He isn't the man we thought. And that's enough." In court, I sat across from Daniel for the first time since his arrest. His eyes locked onto mine, cold and steady, as though daring me to speak. My hands trembled as I took the stand, but when I opened my mouth, my voice was strong. I told the jury about the night I heard the crying in the garage, about finding Emily tied up, about the photographs and letters in the attic. Daniel never flinched. He sat there, calm, composed, like a man watching a play he already knew the ending to. But when Emily testified, when she spoke through tears about what he had done, the way he had threatened her, something flickered in his eyes. Anger, fear, maybe both. For weeks, the trial dragged on. Evidence piled up. More families came forward, other girls, other horrors. Piece by piece, Daniel's empire of lies crumbled. The day the verdict was read, I sat holding Emily's hand in one and Mark's in the other. My heart thundered so loudly I thought it might burst. "Guilty on all counts," the judge declared. Relief washed over me, but it was bitter. Nothing could undo what he had done. Nothing could erase the scars he had left on Emily, on me, on every family he had shattered. But he would never hurt anyone again. That was something. Afterward, As reporters swarmed, as people gawked, I slipped away. I stood outside the courthouse, the autumn air cold on my face. Margaret joined me, wrapping her arm around my shoulders. "It's over," she whispered, but deep down, I knew it wasn't truly over. Healing doesn't come with a verdict. Trauma doesn't vanish with a sentence. The betrayal, the guilt, the rage, they would linger, maybe forever. But I also knew something else. Daniel had been right about one thing. I hadn't wanted to see. I had lived in denial, too afraid to confront the cracks in my perfect picture. Never again. I looked at Emily, who was watching the courthouse steps with haunted eyes. I squeezed her hand. "We survived," I whispered, "and we'll keep surviving." After the trial, life was not suddenly bright or easy. Justice had been served in a courtroom, but inside me and inside Emily, wounds were still raw and bleeding. Some days it felt like I could breathe again, finally free of the nightmare Daniel had created. Other days I woke up gasping, convinced I could still hear his footsteps in the hall, his voice whispering that I'd never be enough. Trauma is like that. It comes and goes in waves, unpredictable and merciless. Emily stayed with Margaret and me for a while. She was quiet, withdrawn, but little by little she began to trust. She started sitting at the table for meals instead of eating alone in her room. She even smiled once when Mark came home and teased her gently about the way she curled her hair. Those small sparks of life felt like victories. Proof that Daniel hadn't stolen everything from her, but inside me, there was still a war. His note gnawed at me, the accusation that I had been blind, that I had let myself be fooled, that I was complicit. I hated that part of me wondered if it was true. Hadn't there been nights when Daniel came home late and I didn't ask questions? Hadn't there been flashes in his eyes, sharp and unsettling, that I chose to dismiss? Maybe I hadn't wanted to ruin the illusion of the life I thought I had. I carried that guilt like a weight on my chest, and sometimes when Emily had nightmares, when she clung to me whispering, "Don't let him find me," I felt that guilt double in size. Because if I had seen sooner, maybe she wouldn't have been hurt at all. Margaret was my anchor. She reminded me that Daniel was a master manipulator, that he had fooled everyone, not just me. "Don't you dare blame yourself," she would say, gripping my hand so tightly it hurt. "He did this, not you. Never you." But guilt isn't logical. It's emotional. It seeps into cracks and takes root. One evening, about 6 months after the trial, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name scrawled across the envelope. My stomach sank before I even opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed this time, no handwriting to trace. "You think it's over, but it isn't." Daniel had friends, people who believed in him, people who still do. "You'll never erase him, and you'll never erase what he said about you." My blood ran cold. It could have been a cruel prank, but deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just about Daniel anymore. He had followers, sympathizers, people willing to keep his legacy alive. I didn't tell Emily. She was just starting to reclaim slivers of normalcy, and I wouldn't take that away. But I told Margaret. She swore we'd go to the police, that they'd investigate, that I wasn't alone. Still, the fear clawed at me. Daniel might have been behind bars, but the shadow of what he had built lingered. Weeks later, I finally visited him. Against every instinct in my body, I needed answers. I needed to look into his eyes one more time and demand the truth. Walking into that prison visiting room was like stepping into the belly of the beast. When Daniel shuffled in wearing his orange jumpsuit, he smiled at me. A smile so calm, so familiar, it made me nauseous. "Lorraine," he said smoothly, as though greeting me at our kitchen table. "You look good." I gripped the edge of the table to keep from shaking. "Why?" I asked, my voice low and sharp. "Why, Emily? Why any of them? He tilted his head, eyes glinting. Because I could. Because they were there, because I needed control. You of all people should understand that. My breath caught. You're sick. You ruined lives. You destroyed our family. He leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper that slid under my skin. You keep telling yourself that I destroyed it, but tell me, Lorraine, wasn't part of you relieved to finally have something to blame, to finally see what you didn't want to see? You knew. You always knew. I wanted to scream, to lunge across the table, but instead I stood abruptly, my chair screeching against the floor. You will not twist me anymore, I spat. You don't get to define me. You don't get to live through me. He only smiled. We'll see. Walking out of that prison, I felt both shaken and liberated. He had tried again to plant his poison inside me, but I finally understood. I had a choice. I could carry his words like a chain, or I could burn them to ash. That night, I sat Emily down and told her the truth. Not about the letter, but about Daniel's attempt to break me in prison. He wants us to carry his voice forever, I told her softly. But we don't have to. We can choose something else. She looked at me with wide eyes, then slowly reached for my hand. Can we really? I squeezed her hand. Yes, it won't be easy, but we can. In the months that followed, we both began therapy, together and separately. It wasn't a magical cure. There were still nights filled with screams, still mornings when the weight of everything made it hard to get out of bed. But there were also good days, days when Emily laughed at a silly joke Mark made, days when I felt sunlight on my skin and thought, I'm still here. And slowly, I started to believe it. 1 year after the trial, Emily stood before a small group at a survivors' support event. She told her story, not in detail, but enough to reclaim her voice. When she said, I am not what he did to me. I am more. Tears poured down my cheeks, because she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting back. As for me, I stopped asking myself how I could have missed the signs. I stopped replaying the past like a crime scene I should have solved. I chose instead to look at the present, the girl who now had a chance at a future, the son who still believed in me, the sister who never left my side. Daniel thought he had written the ending of my story. But he hadn't. I had, and this is it. No matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how sharp the wounds, we can choose not to let the monsters win. We can choose to rebuild, to fight back, to hold on to the people who matter. So if you're listening to me now, if you've carried betrayal in your bones or wounds in your heart, know this: you are not alone, and you are not what was done to you. You are more. If this story moved you, please share your own experiences in the comments. Let's create a space where no one feels silenced. Share this video so others can hear it, and follow this channel if you want more stories of truth, resilience, and survival.